Hey there, boxing world. Today I'm gonna give it to you raw and uncut. Well, Oscar De La Hoya was cooking today. He went hard and deep on the PBC. Pause. And you know they don't really like each other, but it was long overdue and it was a long time coming. Pause. Okay, let's talk about this. He started with Tim Tszyu. He actually likes Tim Tszyu, but he had some choice words to say about him. He said that he got destroyed because the PBC does not know what to do with matchmaking. And I do have to agree with Oscar De La Hoya. If you see the Tim Tszyu versus Barack fight last week, that arena was very tiny, very small. But you know what? The fans actually won in that fight, because even if they paid for nosebleeds, they could say they had front row seats. They could see the whole action, because that was the smallest arena I've ever seen in a boxing event, with two great fighters. One was undefeated and the other one only had one loss, Tim Tszyu. And it was a great fight. Well, no, that fight was not great, but the undercards were pretty good. But yeah, it seems like the PBC is actually scaling down. I also do notice the same content creators, if the PBC does something good, they will be the first to talk about it. And it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I did not see any of these content creators talk about the tiny arena. They did not even mention that at all. And it's always the same usual suspects. Something tells me that my ego is getting the better of me, man. But that was not it. That was not all. And Oscar De La Hoya was cooking this time, like I said. And he also talks about snakes and douchebags on his promotional company, GOLDENBOY. They waited for their top level fighters' contract to expire so they will be able to sign them to the PBC. So that's why the PBC has so much talent. At one point they stole all their talent from GOLDENBOY. So that's the reason that the PBC blew up the way they did, because without GOLDENBOY, the PBC wouldn't be shit. Let's name a few fighters that were top level fighters that went from GOLDENBOY to the PBC. Now, that was Deontay Wilder, Errol Spence, and a bunch of other fighters that I cannot remember. The Charlo brothers. And I do not want to say Jermell and Jamal, because when they were both fit, I cannot distinguish from either one, because they both have the same name. And usually you can tell the difference between twins sometimes. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Well, this time you can't. But now, when one was fit and one was fat, I could. One was fit Charlo and one was fat Charlo. And I am not trying to talk shit about the Charlo brothers. That's just the way I feel about them, because they look so much alike. Well, not anymore. There's a fit Charlo and a fat Charlo. And the 154-pound Charlo is actually my second favorite fighter from any weight class. First is Teofimo Lopez, then the 154-pound Charlo, then Naoya Inoue, then Ryan Garcia, and everybody else I really don't care. I mean, I still like them as fighters, but I don't really have anybody else that fits the fifth. And Oscar De La Hoya also talks smack of what happened with the PBC and the fighters they stole. Now, kind of like, where are they now? At first he said, yeah, they were doing pretty good, but in the end they started fighting almost every 3 years, and it's a sinking ship over there at the PBC. And I believe it is. They're not doing so good. I really don't believe that Al Haymon is sick enough that he cannot run his own promotional company. But if he is sick, hopefully he does have a speedy recovery and it's nothing so serious, because if it is, I'm gonna be praying for Al Haymon, because he did give us some of the biggest fights. But hopefully it's nothing serious and it's something like COVID or the flu, where, I mean, you can still think. And how come he cannot make these fights happen? Because he is sick. Shouldn't he have a team to run his company for him? Because he does not make any interviews. He does not go out to the public. So he's always in the back of the scenes trying to make these fights happen, right guys? Because kind of like somebody works a regular job and you have the flu or the cold, you can still get up and go to work. Yes, you'll be tired and groggy, but sometimes you cannot miss work because you need the pay. You know, a 9 to 5 doesn't pay that much and you have to go to work, but you're able to still do your job, right? And this is not really a hard labor job, what he is doing. He is just trying to make matchmaking, right? Why can't he do that? Unless it's something very serious, or unless it's cap. Either or. I mean, I can go with either or. I mean, if it's cap, then you just say you're not doing so good, man. And it is getting so bad that a lot of these fighters are not liking their opponents, and they actually have to call the opponents that they want to fight to make these fights happen. So it must be something serious, because they have to do that, or either Haymon cannot think straight and he's giving them some whack opponents, which all these fighters are trying to make better fights. Like David Benavidez was supposed to fight Jesse Hart, but he didn't like that opponent, so he called to fight David Morrell, and he made that fight happen. And also the Charlos wanted to change their opponents, and they did. Also, it does seem that they only have 12 days out of the whole year to make these events happen though, right guys? Because Showtime left the PBC and Amazon Prime joined the PBC, right? Well, Gervonta Tank Davis is the #1 fighter in the PBC, not skill wise, the one that brings the most revenue, and he had a contract worth $240 million for like 6 or 7 fights, right? So that's like $35 million a fight. So where's all this money coming from if the gate only made like 14 to 16 million dollars and he only sold like 400k pay-per-view buys? Is the PBC only working for Gervonta Tank Davis, or how does that work? Because the math ain't mathing, because they still gotta pay David Benavidez and Charlo, and those guys ain't cheap, and it just doesn't make any sense. If it doesn't make any money, it doesn't make sense. And also, the PBC does have 12 events a year, right? And they only threw 6. That's only half. But maybe their contract says whatever they don't use this year, they'll be able to use it next year. And they're going to be laughing at us, and they're going to go hard on us next year. But you just never know, because this is brand new to the PBC. And I always thought it was kind of weird that the PBC is putting the biggest names under one card, sharing only one pay-per-view and one gate. So it's really not mathing, and David Benavidez and the Charlo brothers are not cheap, so they're only sharing one gate and one pay-per-view event. So I'm just wondering how they're paying these guys, because they still have 6 events left. There must be some money issues, guys, and I hope they do better, because they got some raw talent in there. Hey, but guess what, guys? I ain't the biggest, I'm the baddest. Subscribe.